Okay, first up, Batman vs. Superman 3D, and let's take a look at this. As we close in, you start to see the power of this cover. Look at the depth that appears between Batman and Superman as they stand off in this giant field of destruction. You see the background, there's some depth back there behind Superman as well. All sorts of floating 3D debris all about them. You got the logo and the title up top, nothing too special there. But this is a powerful cover, one that I would expect to be solid in this competition. Look at the lens flare in the center there. A lot to like about this cover. Next up, Live, Die, Repeat. No, that's not the title of this movie, actually. The title of the movie, Edge of Tomorrow, is what this one is called, and they give you a lot of information on the cover. You see multiple movie quotes, plus the tagline, Live, Die, Repeat, in this nice reflective gold lettering. But they also give you 3 scenes from the movie. As opposed to just one image, you get 3 different scenes. And let's take a closer look. Emily Blunt and Tom Cruise, the stars, in this sort of intimate sort of scene in some kind of docking bay or something. I don't know where they are, but you do get some nice depth between them and the background player back there. Then you go down to this action scene in the center. You see Tom Cruise in his mech leaping across the sci-fi landscape. And again, Tom Cruise's mug on the bottom, sort of aghast, looking at shock. So this is one of those covers that's saying more is more, not less is more. They're giving you 3 images, they're giving you a bunch of information. It does give you the cast and the title at the bottom there, Edge of Tomorrow 3D. This is sort of a dark horse. No one knows what to expect out of it, but it made it into the field of 32, so it's going to compete. The star power of Tom Cruise, triple Tom Cruise. Can he push it over the top? Okay, here we are now, Final Destination 5 in 3D, and this cover is doing a little bit of everything that we love, sort of fulfilling the dream of 3D and the ultimate promise. Look at this as we close in on it. There are all these fragments floating in space. They're actually bone fragments exploding from the skull as these bars of rebar protrude from its various orifices, and these bars of rebar are just popping out of this cover, just poking right into your eyes. And we love it when there's an intense 3D effect like that on this cover. Final Destination 5 is not messing around. I'm expecting big things out of this cover in the competition. Next up, 47 Ronin 3D. No one saw this coming. A lot of people forgot about this movie, but there he is, Keanu Reeves, and some of the major players are featured prominently on this lenticular cover, and as we shift it back and forth, we can appreciate that a little bit of the cast featured here, and they all look good. Really nice kind of character designs in this movie. Front and center, floating in space. As we move to the bottom, there's this intense image of this burning village with the silhouetted samurai. That must be Keanu down there. Some nice distance between the fire and his silhouette down at the bottom. And that red color in the background, distance providing some nice depth between the cast and the background. And of course, the lettering, you gotta give it up. Silver, reflective lettering for the 47 Ronin and the gold reflective for the 3D. It's nice attention to detail like that that's going to take 47 Ronin into this competition swinging. Should do well. Here we go. Next up, Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. No one saw this one entering the competition, but a lot of people are behind it. And I'm going to show you why right now. The imagery on this lenticular cover is powerful. The flaming wheel, the motorcycle just driving straight out at you, and then the chain protruding even farther into the foreground at you. It's just a powerful, awesome comic book style cover. The effect of everything comes across very nice. The fire has almost a liquid quality to it, as the Spirit of Vengeance is just popping right off this cover. right at you. You can feel the flames, and you can feel the chain too. There's something about that chain coming out even farther than the front wheel itself. It's an impressive cover. A lot of people are expecting big things out of Spirit of Vengeance in this field of 32. Okay, next up, Godzilla 3D. A lot of people didn't see this coming, but Godzilla, big budget Godzilla 3D, the remake, and as we close in on it, we can really appreciate this. At first, it doesn't seem so special, but it has almost a snow globe effect to it. It almost feels like you're looking at a little 3D diorama here. The city of San Francisco, Godzilla just behind the skyline, and then a massive plume of smoke behind that. Look at this up at the top. You've got this flock of flares dropping out of the sky, all floating at their own distance, dropping right down towards the main scene, the destruction of San Francisco, the beloved Bay Area being pummeled by this big lizard, and it's well represented on this cover for Godzilla 3D. It's a charming image. It's an ominous image. Let's see if it can make it out of the first round. Okay, here we go. Good Dinosaur, the Good Dinosaur, Disney coming out. A lot of people wouldn't have expected this one. It came out of nowhere, but this one is doing a couple of things that are very unique and special. This is actually a front runner, believe it or not, and this is why. Do you see what's happening here? The image is not just shifting in 3D space, but it's actually changing. A lot of the covers are not going this far. You see the boy's expression changing. You see the dino's expression changing. It's actually multiple images. Look at this, how this magical kind of pixie dust appears in the foreground as you shift the image. It's just, there's a quality and thoughtfulness to this. You get kind of lost in the fantasy of it as you shift the cover back and forth. And then look at the edges. Gold foil edges embossed with paw prints. This is a cover that takes it over the top. There's attention and detail all over this thing. Like I said, one of the front runners in this competition. People are expecting the Good Dinosaur to definitely make it into some of the final rounds. We'll see if it pulls it off. Next up, Jack Black, Goosebumps. Remember this one? Well, upon first examination, you say, is this too busy? What's going on here? There's a lot of chaos on this cover, but as we go in closer, we notice a few things. First of all, a really kind of nice color scheme, this nice kind of yellow and blue border. You see the cast represented in 3D space right in the center, and around the border, some of the various monsters and menaces found in the movie, the Wolfman, the puppet, the praying mantis, and they're all in their own 3D space. So if you look closely, you actually get a nice representation of a lot of different elements of this movie, and it all kind of works together. The main question for me on this one is it too much? Is there just too much going on and you get lost in the concept of it? Look at the nice title, this kind of gold oozing, dripping Goosebumps. And of course, you've got the little 3D gnomes peeking out from around the corner and around the character's feet. Whole bunch of little 3D gnomes in there, okay? So look, there's a lot to like for Goosebumps. A lot of people are behind this one. We'll see how it does in the competition. Goosebumps is in the field of 32. Okay, this is a big one now. A heavy hitter, Gravity 3D. Gravity 3D did not come to play. Look at this image. I mean, this is the kind of image you see from an Oscar-nominated picture. They're not pulling any punches. You see George Clooney out there hurtling through space, I'd assume. You see the horizon of the Earth, the sun bursting around the edge of it, the ship furthest into the foreground, shedding parts. It's a powerful image. You feel the height, you feel the elevation, you feel like you're floating in orbit. It's a visceral image that works so well with the lenticular effect and the 3D effect. Gravity 3D, one of the big guns in this competition. Okay, next up in the field of 32, The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey 3D. Now look, all three Hobbit movies, Hobbit Blu-ray 3Ds, presented lenticular covers. This is the one that rose above the other nominees and made it into the field of 32. And why is that? It's the intimacy right here, face to face with Gandalf. You see the brim of his hat protruding at you. All these three-dimensional leaves fluttering about him. I mean, you can get lost in the depth of his tangled beard if you lose yourself in it a little bit, and it's just a fantastical feeling. It's an intimate feeling. The warm sunlight passing through the trees in the background. You get nice depth between everything in this image, even though it's a close-up. So it's a charming image. It conveys the cozy vibes of the film. It'll be interesting to see how the Hobbit Unexpected Journey does in this competition. Next up, Jupiter Ascending 3D. Oh my, from the creators of the Matrix trilogy. There it says it. And as we start to shift the cover about, we see some of the things that make this such a special lenticular cover. Of course, you got Jupiter herself there. You've got her boy toy, and they're here prominently featured. Full body, okay? Full bodies featured on the cover. You've got the title floating in 3D space in front of them, and this sort of sci-fi mechanical landscape at their feet. Enormous planet in the background, a moon in the background. You've got clouds and activity. It's just a big budget, flashy sci-fi showpiece, and it extends that idea to the cover here. So Jupiter Ascending is ready to compete in the field of 32. We'll see how it does. Okay, next up, Jurassic World 3D. Oh boy, from the golden era. When this came out, the promise of 3D was still very accepted. Good times are going on. And look at this image. Look at this cover. You've got Chris Pratt zooming along on his motorcycle. Look how when you shift the cover, the wheel spins. The front wheel spins. Anytime they pull off some little magic like this, it is very much appreciated, and he's surrounded by his pack of velociraptors, the famous scene in the final act of the movie. He's racing along surrounded by his pack, his buddies. Various depths and distances between them really give you a nice feeling of the speed involved in this scene, the intensity. You see the blurred background zooming by in the back. It all kind of works together really nicely. The logo itself has 3D depth to it, and then it's all surrounded by this beautiful silver border, this sort of brushed steel effect on the border. Really ties it all together. A nice color scheme on this one. A lot to like about Jurassic World 3D. It'd be hard to say this isn't one of the front runners as well. A lot of people are expecting this one to go far in the competition. Okay, Mad Max Fury Road 3D. Oh boy, talk about 3D. I mean, the movie itself is a top 10 3D movie, no doubt, maybe top 5, but it has nothing to do in this competition with the quality of the cover. Now, this quality of the cover, out of all the covers, this one's maybe harder to convey in 2D as I'm doing now. I'll do my best. Because it is this sort of just plain desert landscape, it's hard to tell how nice the effect is of the depth. You're just looking off into infinity a little bit there. Hard to convey over a 2D imagery, but I hope you kind of get the idea. You can see the clouds shifting. So even though there's not a lot of objects on this cover to differentiate space between, you still get this very vast, massive feeling of 3D depth in it. Okay, and you have your hero in the foreground with his car, with his iron horse, his stallion there. So we'll see how it goes. It's hard to tell for Mad Max Fury Road. A lot of its success may depend on its matchup. Who's it going to be put up against in the first round? Okay, next up, MIB3, Men in Black Part 3. A lot of people didn't expect this one, but it did make it into the field of 32. Let's check out some of the things that are nice about this. First and foremost, the cast, the Men in Black themselves, featured right in the foreground, right up front. Will Smith just popping out at you. If you ever wanted to know what it's like to be nose to nose with the Fresh Prince, this is it. But there they are, the three Men in Black, Josh Brolin, Will Smith, Tommy Jones, and in the background you've got this kind of really cool looking indigo kind of blue solar flare kind of effect. You've got the MIB3 logo floating in space. So you do get some nice depth here. It's a simple concept. It's easy to understand what's happening here. Matchups might have a lot to do with it, but we are all very curious to see how MIB3 is going to perform. Will it get out of the first round? A lot of people are picking this as an underdog. Okay, next up, Minions. Minions appearing in 3D, a nice clean cover grabs your eye, the white and the yellow, and a whole pile of minions here taking up space on the cover. I mean, it is enjoyable to scan across this with your eyes just to see all their little charming bulbous forms, a bunch of little sort of ball-like figures popping off the cover at you. And there's a bunch of them here, but once you start looking at the details, you don't know how much is really going on. There's not really a bunch of hidden gags here or anything like that. It's just a bunch of minions. Just a pile of minions. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one matches up and how far it can go. Just riding the charm of the minions, because that's basically what it is. It's sort of a simple concept that just says you like these bulbous shaped minions. Next up, Moana, another front-runner entry by Disney. Disney, the heavy hitters, going all out on these lenticular Blu-ray 3D covers, and this one is no exception. Holy smokes, this is a beautiful piece of artwork. Look at Moana there, all the main characters and casts center, crisp imagery, nice 3D depth around them. I mean, they're just popping out on this image as 3D figures. Then you have the beautiful water in the background, the waves. You can see the turtle inside the water. You can see into the water, fish swimming about, and it all wraps around here. Look at the foreground. You've got water in the foreground even further out. It wraps around the edge of the image. Everything sort of seamlessly fits together. You have an island paradise in the distance. Look at this border, this beautiful shimmering blue and green, all the colors of the rainbow, with a nice embossed edge design, a nice textured design along the edge. I mean, this is just a beautiful image. It gets across the beauty of the movie. It's captivating to the eye, and Moana has to absolutely, I would say, be one of the strongest front runners in this competition. A lot of people expecting this one to go very far, possibly all the way. Keep your eyes on this lenticular cover. It's making my eyes drool. Okay, Pacific Rim 3D, here we go. Sci-fi action again, showing up big time as we get this big old mech right here in the center. Powerful 3D, it's fist popping at you. You see the helicopter in the foreground floating about. You see the other mechs coming in the background. You got rain and water dripping off of its arm. You got ocean splashing out in front of you. I mean, this is a lot of fun. You tilt this thing back and forth and you gaze into it and you feel like you're in an action scene in this movie. There's just so much to appreciate and enjoy. Look at this guy descending out of the dark sky back there. You got the solar flare popping out, spotlights behind him. There's so much action on this cover, and yet it's really easy to take in and enjoy it. So Pacific Rim 3D, I love this cover, and everyone's expecting pretty good things out of this, I think. A strong contender, Pacific Rim 3D. Okay, Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides, limited 3D edition. This is the one that made it. It made it into the competition, the Field of 32, McShane, Cruz, Depp, Rush, all featured up top. At first it seems like a sort of plain cover, but look at this scene down below. You got these characters on this rock, you got these sirens on this other rock, you have the splashing water, the rolling tide, you see some mermaids underwater and the ship out in the distance. It's an amazing scene. Then up here on the title, you've got this 3D skull that shifts back and forth as you look at it. It's just a lot of different things in here. Once you start looking at the details, Depp's locks, his hair is hanging down around his head. It's just a nice depth to this overall imagery. It's very appealing and it makes you want to watch the movie, quite frankly. So it's a successful lenticular cover. I would say it does its job, and Disney doing as they always do. Look at this. They also have a border on here, a textured border, sort of pirate themed, old weathered wood or something. Disney's not fooling around, as they have yet another strong contender in this competition with Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides 3D. Okay, pixels in 3D. Here's another one entering the field of 32 now. Strong image right out of the gate. Let's look at what makes this so special. First of all, there's a whole bunch of stuff floating in 3D space. Shout out, you got a nice little Q*bert down here bobbing around. You've got the whole cast in the center, their guns, okay, protruding out into the foreground. A beautiful effect. Then you've got Pac-Man, bulbous Pac-Man looming behind them. You've got some nice distance between them and Pac-Man. You've got some Space Invaders, Donkey Kong up on top of the skyline, getting ready to launch a barrel. You've got one of his barrels crashing into the building on the right. All kinds of debris flying at your face. The title up top. Everything about this cover works. It's strong. It's visceral. It grabs your eye, and it puts you in the center of the action, which is so important for a lenticular cover to do. And I love the effect of the title. Because of the angle they do, it really works good with the bottom of the lettering just coming out into the foreground. So pixels in 3D, keep your eye on this one. Okay, next up, Point Break 3D. No one saw this one coming, but as you'll see, it's here for good reason. I mean, just look at the effect as they take an image from one of the scenes in the final act of the movie and they put it right on the cover, this enormous monster wave, and you get so much depth from the front and the back of this wave. It's a wonderful effect. Then you have the surfers, Bodie and crew down here. I mean, look at this. You can see the droplets of water floating in space around them, the wave looming behind them with a nice distance and depth between them. And then up top, as the wave curls, you also get this nice effect of the wave coming off of the cover and the Point Break 3D title kind of floating underneath it. It's a beautiful, simple piece of artwork that works so well. I mean, this is a nice image. This is something you could hang on your wall and gaze into and get a lot of enjoyment out of, I think. So Point Break 3D, another one of these underdogs that sort of no one expected for it to make it into the field of 32, but it might be here to stay. Okay, next up, Schwarzenegger Predator 3D. What's this, you say? Yes, there were a selection of movies that were converted. They were given proper high-quality conversions of these classic movies, and they became 3D titles. And this one, Predator 3D, actually made it into the competition because of its lenticular cover. Now look what's happening here. You probably noticed the light is shifting. We're going between Predator heat vision and normal vision. And we see the target appears also over the screen. The plants are being affected by this heat vision. Everything on the cover is being affected by this heat vision. So this is one of those covers that's sort of doing two things at once. Even though the image isn't moving, it actually is two completely different images as we're seeing Arnold through the eyes of the Predator. And it's never looked so real with the 3D depth on it. And then of course you've got the classic title logo and the 3D popping off of that. I mean, this just has a clean, beautiful effect. It's an awesome reference to a component of the movie, the Predator's heat vision. So here's one of these movies that's coming in here strong, doing something a lot of these other competitors aren't doing. Predator 3D, starring Schwarzenegger. I mean, the angles of Arnold Schwarzenegger's face lend themselves to 3D, the depth. It's a very nice thing to gaze upon. Next up, Dwayne Johnson, the bulging rock, the bulging Johnson, San Andreas 3D, and what a cover. An action spectacle as this rescue helicopter that they pilot for a portion of the movie is just floating out in space in the foreground. Enormous skyscraper collapsing behind it. I mean, you can almost feel this thing tumbling like a tree. And then plumes of smoke coming off the devastated city in the far background. Then you've got all kinds of smoke effects coming off the building. You've got some debris. I mean, epic action scene on the title. They did this nice touch where the gold 3D lettering is actually floating up kind of nice away from everything else. Huge feeling of space and depth and distance you get in this one, and you're just put right into the center of the action, the destruction of this epic earthquake that takes place. This movie's a thrill ride, and I would say this cover, this lenticular cover, is no exception. The lenticular cover's a thrill ride too. It's a heck of a thrill ride, and we expect big things out of San Andreas 3D in the first round of competition. Okay, Star Trek Into Darkness 3D. Here we go. Look at this cover. Boy, is it pretty. You get the Enterprise going down in flames, plummeting into the planet's surface. You get these three-dimensional contrails. Okay, nothing like a three-dimensional contrail. Nothing like a good contrail. And look at all the debris floating off this thing as it plummets towards the planet far below. You get the J.J. Abrams light flares in 3D across the bottom of the cover. Shout out. Okay, the glowing red light sort of streaking behind the Enterprise. It's a powerful image and a beautiful image. And then up top, the Star Trek Into Darkness 3D lettering, this mirror-like textured, it has a texture too, lettering is so pretty. So this is just pretty cover. It's a high quality cover. A lot of love was put into this, and the 3D lenticular effect, it's captivating to view. Star Trek Into Darkness 3D, one of my personal favorites in this competition. I am so curious to see how it's gonna get matched up and how far it's gonna get. Star Trek, we're rooting for you. Okay, Star Wars, The Force Awakens 3D. Now this is the special edition cover. Oh, this is a beautiful cover. Look at the charm of this, the coziness. We're in the forest with all these floating snowflakes in 3D depth. You see the lightsaber ablaze in the foreground. Nice distance between it and the trees behind it. Look at the snowflakes floating all around the lightsaber, illuminated by it. And then you get all kinds of snowflakes at various depths. The title, gorgeous, with a nice gold stroke on it. Gold 3D. Oh, the depth in this image is just so beautiful. It's another one of those pieces that you say you could hang up on the wall. It's just a nice art piece. And look at the border. It's this nice kind of like soft black border with a nice kind of matte texture on it. It's just classy as hell. Star Wars The Force Awakens 3D, I would say, is a very strong contender. Next up, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3D. Remember this? It's easy to forget now that we've got Mutant Mayhem. However, the movie exists. These ugly turtles exists, but the cover does a lot of things right. The lenticular cover, look at the way Raph's sai, Leo's sword, Mikey's nunchuck, even Donnie's bow, all the weapons are just protruding out of the screen, swiping right at you. A glorious 3D effect. All four turtles featured prominently, center stage, and up top, this really nice mirror-like lettering, super reflective, silver embossed. Okay, you can feel this stuff in reality. It's popping off the cover. That's not a lenticular effect there. That is elevated lettering, elevated titling, okay? It was enough to make it into the field of 32, and who knows, these Ninja Turtles might even surprise a couple people before this competition is over. Next up, Transformers Age of Extinction. Multiple Transformers movies with lenticular covers, but Age of Extinction is the one that's going to represent the franchise. Why is that? Optimus Prime dropped to his knees, battle damage. You see him here wincing in pain. A great distance between him and the plumes of smoke and destruction of the battlefield behind him. You see the glowing red embers of his battle damaged melted steel frame. Emotional image. The 3D effect is powerful. The lenticular representation is strong and ever present. Michael Bay, back-to-back nominations with Ninja Turtles and Transformers. We'll see how they do. Okay, here we go. Disney again pulling no punches. Gaze upon it. Tron Legacy 3D. And at first glance you say, what's so special about this? Let's take a look at what is so special as we see the lenticular effect shift from left to right. We start to notice the incredible depth and beauty that exists within this imagery. Look at this, you got a digital bridges frame left. You got digital bridges mug even closer, frame right, okay? So kind of bookended by bridges there, and right in the center, look at that. Transcending, the transcendent power of the disc floating. You just get a great effect. And then in the very foreground, you get the Tron discs popping out at you, just a whole bunch of layers of depth. The title Tron 3D and this glowing neon lettering floating in space. And once again, you know how Disney does it by now, the embossed edges. This kind of stuff is what they're banking on to get them far in the competition. And it's working here with Tron. Everything is working about this cover Tron 3D. Expect big things from yet another entry by Disney in this Lenticular Olympics. Okay, Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets. Here's another underdog making the cut, making it into the field of the 32, rising above the vast number of nominees to be here. And what is happening here? A whole bunch of characters. Whole bunch of characters are featured front and center on this obscure sci-fi bonanza, big budget bonanza. Now they're banking on all their characters and their variety of characters for this one. You got some real interesting looking creatures, humanoids, all kinds of things. The only thing that's working against it is everyone is pretty small. There's a lot of characters and they're all kind of small, so it's hard to kind of appreciate any individual one of them. Look at this, you got a couple ships floating out in space here on the border, which is a nice touch. You got this creature looming in the background. He's popping out of this explosion. It's a nice effect. You got this sort of interstellar burst of stars passing by around the very edge of the border. Nice colors that shift a little bit as you go left and right. So Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets, nothing to lose, everything to gain, and they're taking a swing out here, so they could get lucky with some matchups. We'll see how they do. Okay, The Walk, a true story. Our next nomination from the director of Castaway and Flight, heavy hitters. What an effect this cover has. It's doing something really special. First and foremost, look at how they do this. Like the spinning wheel on Ghost Rider, well, here you have the protagonist actually making the walk, traveling from right to left to right, across the tightrope as you shift the lenticular cover. What a brilliant effect this was. And of course, pitting us high atop the former Twin Towers. My goodness, you truly get a sense of scale as you can feel the city far in the distance below. Just absolute vertigo-inducing imagery here. Solid, crisp image and the charm of the tightrope walker traveling across the gap. We expect huge things from The Walk. This is a quality image, a quality lenticular cover. Welcome to the competition. Here's another one some of you might have forgotten about, but it's rearing its lenticular cover here to remind you that it didn't go anywhere. Warcraft, the beginning. Big budget extravaganza, live action Warcraft, and they went all out with the lenticular cover as well. You can see up top. There is depth here. The only issue is the sword is very close to their face, so you don't get a lot of differentiation. But down bottom here, you have the rest of the cast, and they're floating nicely in their little lenticular reality. And down bottom, this can be easily missed, but it's very special. You get this grand field of battle, just this massive warscape, and you really feel the scale of it with the depth provided by the lenticular effect. So there's actually quite a bit going on this cover, and this as well, I have to point it out, the border here is something that none of the other competitors are doing. It also has this custom border. However, it's not just embossed cardboard, it's actually 3D lenticular material. So there is a little depth on this border. It's very hard to see here on the 2D representation I'm showing you, but there is a little bit of depth on that border. We couldn't ignore that. A little attention to detail, something that Warcraft, the beginning, hopes will take it over the top in this competition. We'll see how far this sucker goes. Okay, Wrath of the Titans 3D, here we go. This one is a hidden gem of a movie, another top 10 3D movie, believe it or not. Clash of the Titans 3D, the first one, suffered from poor 3D. The sequel is brilliant though, I recommend it to anyone. And look at this cover, absolute action-packed spectacle moment represented. A huge amount of debris being thrust out at you as our hero is atop this massive titan, this two-headed titan, and if you go up real close, you can see the depth on him. You can see the spear that he holds in his hands and all the debris surrounding him. A wonderful effect here on the heads of the roaring beasts, the flames spilling out from their mouths. You get all sorts of different layers of depth across this cover here on this stunning action scene. Look how nice the titling on this is done. This sort of golden, sort of molten stone effect, and it's floating over the gray sky and the debris in the background. Something about this cover, it's a beautiful thing to witness. I feel like this is a strong competitor in this competition, and a lot of people are lining up behind Wrath of the Titans 3D as the best Blu-ray 3D cover. We'll see how it does. Okay, wrapping up the field of 32, this is it. Another Disney contender, Zootopia makes the cut. Yes, family-friendly Zootopia is here, and why is it here? Because of this beautiful lenticular cover. Look at the way the characters, so crisp, so charming, just popping off the cover. They have them all around the edge of the border, even the little critter in his office chair on top of the Z, the phone. Look at this, look how the head of the giraffe moves a little bit as you shift left and right with the lenticular effect. In fact, the newspaper's moving as well. Look at the lamp, so the angle is changing. It's so important to notice that. The angle is not just moving, but changing on a couple of parts of this image, and that's where Zootopia is going the extra distance. Look at the title in the middle. Embossed, this beautiful green, sort of faded effect, a little shimmering emerald, and you've got, again, the silver mirror-like border on the Ultimate Collector's Edition, framing this. A wonderful 3D effect, a charming image. It really gets across the mood of this movie and these characters. So Zootopia will round out the field of 32 competitors.